Daku, and today I want to answer a question again, same question as before. Why is it that I talk so much about gardening when I used to talk about smashing white supremacy and thus putting an end to the worldwide black holocaust? I answered this question before. People are thinking I'm going off into gardening as if I'm trying to escape my goal of black liberation somehow. But a real freedom fighter, no matter what he or she does, they're going to use that as a tool to help them to get free. We approach black liberation from a holistic perspective. So no matter what we're doing, we are doing it for the purpose of black liberation. It don't matter what it is. That's what I said. So use your imagination and think about all the different possibilities, even things that other freedom fighters would say, what's he doing? What's she doing? That's counterintuitive. Well, a freedom fighter, again, can use any tool to help them get free. So gardening just so happens to be one of the most noble and powerful tools you can use. Why? Many of you just don't understand, and you make comments and don't know what you're talking about. Just ask a question, which is what I'm doing today. I'm answering the question that was asked of me. Gardening is not just about growing food. Gardening is about growing food, medicine, clothes, shelter, and yes, weapons. But you don't hear too many gardeners talking like that. They're just telling you how to grow vegetables, how to grow some fruits and herbs, and some flowers. Okay. But plants can be used for many, many, many different things. All right, so I don't want to go too far off. Let me get into the article, because somebody said that I'm hiding behind the computer. All I did was let the computer read the article that I wrote. These are my words, and I don't have to hide from the computer or hide behind the computer. These are my words again. And I'm just simply sharing the history so that you can learn lessons from the history. What were people doing? You just got a kind of watered down story about Nat Turner. And everybody's going crazy. Every time they give you a watered down story, you start going crazy. They gave you a watered down story in the 70s, Roots. You went crazy. Even, I really, really respect this brother that produced the film Sankofa. But even Sankofa was watered down. All these movies that you consider threatening, they were all watered down so that they could be made palatable so you could easily take them in. Django was watered down. These movies are watered down. And if you don't know that Django was watered down, just study a little more. Or study a lot more. You can easily see that Django was watered down. We just were so excited that a brother was going around killing some white folks. Alright? And justifiably so. But let me get back into the article. Now, what I write is that those that do not produce things for themselves have difficulty understanding the motivation for destroying white supremacy, because usually they themselves benefit most greatly from white supremacy. Even those of us that are so revolutionary, yelling black power, and even those that might yell black supremacy even, they benefit from white supremacy, the amenities of white supremacy, so much so that they don't want to do too much to smash it. They just kind of want to express their frustration a little bit, but they don't want to give up the comforts that they believe are tied to white supremacy. But remember, we've been on this planet millions of years, maybe even billions of years before there was any such thing as a white man, number one. And definitely before there was any such thing as white supremacy. All right. one thing about using electronics, they go out on it. Alright, so I encourage people to produce things for themselves, because then you're going to be more willing to fight to protect them. But if you ain't producing nothing, then of course you're not going to be willing to fight for. What you fighting for? Everything is being provided for you, being produced for you. You want some food, go to the store. You need some water, go to the store. You need some clothes, go to the store. You need some money, go get a job, get some money, use the money to get all these little things that you need. So you ain't really talking about no revolution. You telling me that because I'm growing food, somehow I'm deviating from black liberation? You need to study a little more. But I'm going to help you, don't worry. I'm the one with the experience, so I'm going to help you to see what you don't see. Perhaps. Maybe that's the problem. You just don't know. Alright. So I encourage freedom fighters and would-be freedom fighters to produce their own food, clothes, shelter, medicine, and weapons. Because those that produce for themselves are more likely to resist and destroy white supremacy than those that are dependent on the white supremacists for all of their daily needs. I just talked about that. To illustrate this, I want to share with you a short history of the Billy Bowlegs war against white supremacy. I will be taking excerpts from the book entitled The Billy Bowlegs War. Who was Billy Bowlegs? Plantation owner Robert Gamble had called Bowlegs a very handsome man, above the medium stature, strong and active, bright, cheerful, and pleasant in manner. A journalist described him as not at all modest, surly, cross, unmanageable, a wildly dangerous foe of the white man, probably because the chief had adamantly refused government offers to have his people relocated to Arkansas. Gamble met Bowlegs through Tiger Tail, who was another dark-skinned man. So when Billy Bowlegs and his compatriots needed a place to rest, Tiger Tail asked the white man who he lived on Gamble's land, Tiger Tail asked the white man's permission for them to stay there for a while to rest. Well, the white man, Gamble, agreed to let them rest. Gamble's daughter was named Mary, and she proceeded to converse with Billy Bowlegs. Now, some of y'all might read into that a little bit. Let me just stop right there, because every time you have a hero as a black man, somehow this white woman shows up, and it's like kryptonite to the black man. He don't know what to do after that. He falls in love. He want to get married and have babies with this white woman. He want to have sex all day with the white woman. All right, but let's see how Billy Bowlegs stayed the course. All right, so where was I? All right, Chief Bowlegs told her the Seminoles disliked brutal murder. That when they killed as quickly as possible. For them, this was a point of honor. Now let me stop right there. First of all, they didn't call themselves Seminoles. This was a term that was used by the white man to refer to these black Indians, which was another term that was referred, that was used by white men to describe them. But we just going to, for the purpose of this article, we're going to continue to read. All right. So where was I? Lost my spot here. All right. Chief Billy Bowlegs. Okay, blah, blah, blah. All right. So after Chief Billy Bowlegs told Mary that, they killed quickly with honor and all that kind of good stuff, he kind of calmed her down because she was afraid of him, of course, because she had heard the tales of these crazy niggas. Black Indian Seminoles that was running around wreaking havoc on these white people. Alright, so she calmed down and she eventually invited him to share a meal. After dinner, they sat on the porch and Mary, with forced casualness, asked, "If there should again be an uprising among your people, would you come back and kill us?" Billy Bowlegs didn't laugh. He looked at her with a straight face, locked eyes with her, and said, "Kill. Yes, but I do it quickly and easy." After the chief and his compatriots rested, they proceeded home. Finally reaching home on December 23rd, 1855, Billy stood in what had been his garden. What had been his what? Garden. Wait a minute. This warrior, this chief, this leader, he was a what? Gardener. Alright. He stood in what had been his garden. What had been several acres of banana stalks more than 15 feet high and assorted vegetable patches. What had been his choicest possession. What he had tended for gifts to his friends and as treats for so-called Seminole children in surrounding Big Cypress Swamp. Now the stalks were broken, the pumpkins smashed, the squash trampled underfoot, and Bowlegs knew who was responsible. He walked 2 miles to the low clearing, flanked by palmetto and pine hammocks. For 2 weeks, Lieutenant George Hartsuffs, I have difficulty with European names, like they have difficulty with African names, men had been surveying the area for the U.S. Army. Bowlegs suspected this survey of being yet another ploy by Secretary of War Jefferson Davis to establish more military posts on black Indian land. Bowlegs wanted peace. He had always encouraged his people to stay away from white settlements so those white settlers would have no reason to trouble black Indian villages. However, settlers still considered them unwelcome neighbors and demanded their removal. Can you get a load of that? Here I am, this is my land. You coming in, you new, and you settling on my land, and you want me to move somewhere? All right. So, where were we? It's hard to keep track of this thing. I need to find a better way to do this. All right. Chief Bowlegs approached the soldiers. Several men at the cook tent immediately started mocking Billy and confirming his suspicions. "What's the problem, Chief?" "You know what the goddamn problem is." The men coolly and readily admitted their guilt. Blood now stained Billy's thoughts. White man's blood. He wanted it and thought he was owed it. The time of his patience and playful laughter had passed. One by one, after being contacted by his messengers, braves arrived at Bowlegs' secluded camp. The chief dipped his fingers in a pot of red paint and smeared war colors onto each man's face. That's right, red paint. They were the real blood. You heard about the Bloods? These was the real Bloods because they wasn't killing other black Indians. They were killing the real enemy, the white supremacists. But I digress. Soon the stomping of a campfire dance and the chilling cries of warriors awaiting battle penetrated the thick woods. Had any settlers heard them, little imagination would have been required to envision the immediate future. The destruction of the chief's garden food supply was enough to abandon any idea of peace. Chief Billy Bowlegs took the destruction of his crops as a declaration of war, and he responded in kind. The federal government established a $500 reward for the capture of Bowlegs and his bloodthirsty band. Even so, Billy Bowlegs' warriors resumed striking north and south and east and west during a 2-month period. So let the story of Billy Bowlegs remove your lack of understanding. As we've told you many times before, growing your own food is a revolutionary act. Billy Bowlegs was not just a gardener, he was a leader and a warrior. So don't be thinking that somehow gardening is escaping the idea of black liberation, escaping the idea, or hiding from this idea somehow of smashing white supremacy and thus putting an end to the Black Holocaust. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. I hope it's cleared up your misunderstanding of what exactly gardening is. Again, as I've stated earlier, and I'll continue to state until you get it, gardening is not just about growing food. Gardening is growing food, is growing medicine, clothes, shelter, and yes, weapons, all of which can be used for black liberation. This has been Daku Akabo Waakatu.